best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've been thinking about leadership a lot lately. It's been on my mind. What is a leader? What is a leader's responsibilities? How does a leader, do the right things? And there's a lot of different views on this. I think there's not a single way to say a leader is this or a leader is that. I think I don't think this. It's obvious. If you go to a bookstore, you go to online training courses, you'll see lots of different opinions on leadership, on what makes a good leader, how to cultivate a leader, how to become a better leader. There's lots there. And I think there are different types of leaders. There's kind of global company leaders. There's people who have broad-based group responsibility. And then I think there are project leaders, or people who, they may not, have the leadership of a lot of people, but they have to work within a matrixed organization to get something completed and get something done. In comic context, we're talking about, say, a chairman of the company, or a general manager, or a head of editorial, for example, as that broader based people leader that is responsible to a company and responsible for a number of different initiatives. And a leader like that has certainly a number of responsibilities. It's a hard job. It's why they pay the money they pay for it. Now, not all leaders take that responsibility seriously, and there are definitely some people who, view the title as the reason why they get the big paycheck as opposed to the responsibility. This is true in every organization where it's like, I'm a vice president, so therefore I make $250,000, and I got a bonus retention package of $500,000, and that's what I do. And then I think you have other people who say, the title is really not that important. It's the amount of influence, amount of control. Or I heard somebody describe it this way once: the amount of damage I can do to the company. The more damage I can do to the company, the more I am paid. Why? Because, they don't want me doing damage to the company. They actually want me doing value to the company. I guess that's a glass half full, glass half empty kind of way of evaluating these things. But in general, I think you talk like a C.B. Cebulski, a David Gabriel, Axel Alonso back when he was in that role, a Joe Quesada, a Jim Lee, a Murray Javins, Daniel Cherry, people like that. These are people who have broad-based leadership responsibilities. If they do their job poorly, they do a lot of damage to the company because their decisions do not affect a single book, but lots of books and lots of people and the very placement of the market. And then I think you have project managers. You have people who are very important still, but their scope is reduced. They still have, they still own the book. So this would be the Alana Smith, the, Chris Conroy, you could go down the list of the various editors that are responsible for pulling a team together, in many cases a team that does not report to them, to achieve a result and get that result out and do it again and do it again. There's a common attribute across a lot of this stuff, and that is very crisp, very valuable, very targeted communication. It's why so many leadership seminars and classes that you go to often talk about, and there's a lot of various tricks with it. How do you communicate? How do you drive clarity? How do you drive accountability? It all kind of means the same thing. If you boil it all down, it's how do you take whatever the problem is, whatever the goal is, how do you achieve a very clear statement about that goal? And then how do you give the people who are involved in it, crystal clear ways of working, ways of executing against that goal? So if you're a comic editor, your goal is to put out a comic. The macro pieces to that is it needs to go out on time, it needs to go out with high quality, it needs to try and achieve more sales than the month before because you constantly want to be growing your share. So we need to do a couple tricks to that. We need to maintain current readers. We need to find ways to get new readers. Both are important. And actually in that order, by the way, this is where kind of business gaming comes into effect. You need to keep your current users. You need to keep your current readers. You need to keep them because you cannot be trying to add users, add readers, add customers while the world is eroding out from under your feet. So you need to establish your base, make it solid, grow. And you need to achieve that, you need to ship a product on time, you need to ship it with high quality, you need to create the intangibles, the little hooks that are going to make the product more valuable, more successful, and you need to bake it into the product you need to go. And then you need to the other part is they call it operationalizing it, but which is kind of a fancy word for you need to make the process repeatable. You cannot, when you do something for the first time, you're going to be inventing a lot of new techniques, new processes, new ways of doing things. Again, I'll keep bringing this back to a comic perspective. If you're an editor, you have to find a creative team that's going to work for you, a writer, an artist, somebody who's going to work on the book. If you changed writers and artists every single issue, it would be extremely inefficient. You'd constantly be having to sign contracts, get people in, get them up to speed, understand their skills, understand the best way that they're going to work with, lettering and inking and coloring, and understand their various deadlines. So do they like morning calls, evening calls? If you're having to do that every single comic, every single month, it's going to be tough. You're going to eat up a lot of time just trying to figure out how people work. So you want to operationalize by getting the same creative team, the same people, the same general working structure. This is why, by the way, just from a pure business perspective, when I talk about editors hiring their friends or editors hiring the people they know, there's obviously a negative part to that, nepotism and blind eye to bad behavior. But there's a positive part of it. And the positive part is exactly what I'm saying. If you hire people you know to do the job, then you're likely to get a better result because you're going in with some advanced knowledge. And and this is not a surprise. All of us know this. I'm sure all of you work in companies and work in places. It's often better to work with people you know and you trust, right? That's the entire point. So there's nothing inherently evil or bad about that. It's just that unchecked, that can go out of control. And in comics, it often is unchecked. But regardless, a project manager, in this case an editor, who's running a comic, has a lot of coordinating jobs to do and a lot of accountability. If they do that job poorly, the comic suffers. It gets lower sales. It will hurt. So therefore, they need to do the best job they can to achieve the various metrics they're trying to do, the quality, the timeliness, the sales, everything else. They need to do it fast, quick, transparent, so that they can keep doing it. And when it goes awry, you get a half-assed result. You get, errors. You get doors in front of bathtubs. You get, racist graffiti in the background of your X-Men comic. You get various things that cause huge problems. The job is important. That's why I keep stressing that it is very easy to go and complain about a Mark Wade or a Tamara Bonvillain or whoever it might be that's making some noise on Twitter. At the end of the day, those are independent contractors. Absolutely, they need to do a better job and they need to be professional for their own self-interest because they want to keep getting employed. And everybody who signs onto a company, whether you're an individual contributor or a manager, you are an ambassador to that company. So you should try and do the best job you can. Not always possible, it's easier said than done in some cases, but that should be your attempt. That should be what you're trying to do. But an editor, and more so the group managers, the editor-in-chief, the chief creative officer, whatever it is, those people have a harder job. Their harder job is, in addition to all of those things, in addition to having driving clarity, getting books out, getting all these things put together, they also must keep, not just do this for one book, but for 30 books, for 80 books. They have a broader scope. They have to look at the project managers, in this case the editors that they're hiring, and they need to say, all right, how do we keep bringing in good quality talent? If people are falling behind on their schedules, we've got to step in. We don't want to step in too quickly because the editors don't learn their own responsibility, their own accountability, they don't do the job. But that work is very difficult. It's not easy. It's a lot of sleepless nights. It's a lot of stress. It's none of this is easy, and that's why it's paid the rate it's paid. But in sometimes the backwards world of comics, it doesn't kind of work out that way. People are paid that value and then they disappear. It's one of the reasons I've been critical of Jim Lee and Daniel Cherry, for that matter, when they came out and they did that interview where they talked about here's what we're driving, here's what we're doing with the comics. And what they said didn't match at all what was going on with the actual books. It's like, yeah, we're producing fewer comics so we can really focus on quality. It's like, except you're producing more comics today than you have for the last 5 years by sheer volume. So what are you talking about? You're doing the opposite of what you say. I think that as leaders, you have to be able to speak clearly and you have to be able to speak accurately or generate confusion. I think those guys generate a lot of confusion. I think they have to be held accountable for that. I think that when you get a comic editor in and they describe their book in a goofy way, it's why I'm so hard on the solicits. It hurts everyone. It hurts the retailers, hurts the chain, it hurts the readers. Everybody suffers from that because it's complicated. It drives customers away. It voids that simple initial goal. Put out a comic book, attract readers, keep the ones you have, get new ones, and grow sales. That's the goal. Leadership is critical. Leadership is not about throwing parties. It's not about having, Taco Tuesday for the team. It's about driving commitment, driving results, driving, responsibility. I don't think this is terribly hard for comics. I think the COVID and people working from home made it very difficult. People, got used to Zoom and, that you could, Zoom can, some people are responsible, does a good job. Other people, it drove out accountability and it made things worse. So, I mean, there's a mixed bag of all that. But it's, it's easy to shirk that responsibility and it's easy to put the attention and the focus on the creatives. It's on the people who are doing the individual work. They are the front face of your product, but ultimately they are not the ones who are going to save you from disaster. So like I said, the people who are managers can do a lot of damage. And so that's why you need good managers because, they can certainly bring value and you want that and that sounds great, but they can also very, very rapidly tank huge aspects of what it is you're doing. And they can do it through negligence, which is the worst. I mean, that is the worst of all of this. We often think of people doing damage as people being intentional, people deliberately screwing something up. But the worst damage in a lot of cases is damage through negligence. This is where people just aren't paying attention and they're screwing things up. That's much worse. That stuff is harder to repair from. It's harder to teach because it's unintentional, and it's unfortunately then you almost get two damages in addition to whatever the core problem was. Like let's say a comic book comes out and April O'Neil is misspelled on the front. That kind of stuff looks bad. It looks unprofessional for the book, but on top of that, it sends a message. That message is nobody cared. Nobody cared enough to step in and did this. Or maybe they were too busy and they didn't get to it. And the too busy could be very, very true, but that's still negligence because then that points back to the person who is in charge to say, how did you let your operations get so out of control, not staffed properly, to the point that, you've got misspellings in your, the cover of your comic book. That's bad. So anyway, a little bit on leadership, blah, blah. We'll get on to funner stuff, but I don't know. The other, I guess what got me onto this was I was talking back and forth with somebody in DM, and they were saying, comic books doesn't really need leaders, was the statement. I'm like, well, everything needs a leader. I'm curious what you think a leader is, but comic books absolutely do need a leader. And we've got lots of evidence of what happens when that leadership responsibility goes sideways, isn't taken seriously. We've got lots of examples of that, and it's not good. So, I've heard this before, like creative fields. They don't really need leaders because everybody's individual and everybody's creative and it all just, all works out. But nope, even creative things, agencies, very successful design agencies, people who are doing very creative work still need leaders. Somebody who's an individual contributor, painting, drawing, selling photography, whatever it is, they still have to act like a leader when it comes to managing their own shop and getting work done. So it doesn't go away. It's always there. Any successful enterprise needs a leader. Maybe that's you. Maybe it's an enterprise of one and you just act like a leader some of the time, but it still has a leader. Anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble on. Let you know your thoughts. Thanks for listening.